Caladrius managed to attract a bit more attention than your average shmup when it released last generation due to its shame break system, which involved anime girls and occasionally guys having their clothes shredded off in stages as they took damage. But what about the game itself? Was the titillation just a mask for mediocre mechanics, or could what lay beneath offer satisfaction of a more serious kind? With the game recently arriving on Switch both digitally and physically, it was finally time for me to dive in and find out. Coming from Raiden developers Moss, Caladrius certainly has some decent pedigree. It opts for the vertical approach and is essentially a bullet hell in terms of gameplay. In this Caladrius Blaze edition for the Switch, we find 3 variations of the main game, with extra stages and different weapon options, as well as boss rush and score attack modes, complete with extensive local and online leaderboards. Now straight away, that is a lot of content right there, and a very positive sign. Moving on to character select, and we have an impressive 8 individuals to choose from, 6 girls, 1 mythical bird, and no doubt the most popular choice, that one guy. Now that's already a very solid range, but it's really taken to another level by the fact that each character has 3 elemental attacks specific to that individual on top of their regular shot. And in certain modes you can even mix and match these shots to your own preferences, giving the game a thoroughly impressive amount of customization. Once you have your character and elemental shots set, it's time to get started, and you're thrown right into some nicely paced action as you try to navigate either 5 or 6 stages of pretty classic bullet hell action, and 2 bonus stages based around ensuring you take out a certain percentage of enemies before hitting a checkpoint. In terms of mechanics, you have, as mentioned earlier, your standard shot, which never runs out, and 3 elemental attacks which deplete as you use them. The charge remaining on each of these is smartly indicated both by a percentage at the bottom of the screen and also by the depletion of a circle that envelops your ship when firing that shot. Releasing fire or changing to another shot allows shots not in use to automatically charge back up. But there is a short delay before this starts, so simply quick switching between all shot types is not an effective strategy. Now, when I said the elemental attacks are all different, I didn't just mean one might have a slightly wider spread than another, I meant they are really different from one another. Some, like the looping laser beam, you may recognise from Raiden, but there are some highly unusual shot types in here, ranging from defensive barriers to crossbeams that fix in the position where you activated them, to swinging mace-like objects extending in front of your ship. It's going to take you some serious experimentation to find the setup that works best for you, and trying out all the different combinations is both fun and rewarding. Other than all these shots, you also have a bomb, again different for each character, which while it will clear the screen can take just a split second to activate, removing a little of the death cheating function and requiring a bit more forethought for effective deployment. There's also a 4th elemental attack which can be charged up and, much like a bomb, released all at once to potentially devastating effect. However, this will deplete all your elemental charges to 0, and unless you're using it to deliver the coup de grace to a boss, can be more trouble than it's worth. With one exception, there are no environmental hazards, and your focus is on taking out enemies and dodging bullets. There are a lot of systems in place to stop this from getting stale, however, with hidden towers that replenish your elemental attack's charge, gem fragments that can be collected to give you an extend, and ether chips that can be used at stage end to power up elemental attacks of your choosing. The scoring system also has some real depth to it, with bonus points being awarded based on a multitude of factors at stage end. The main way to score big though is by raising your multiplier during play. This multiplier increases when taking out enemies with elemental attacks only, and your shot choice here plays a big part as you must take out enemies with the elemental part of your attack. This is easier said than done since, as mentioned, elemental attacks have limited charge, and many have restricted range, or incorporate your standard shot, meaning you may miss out on that multiplier unless you're very careful with your positioning. With this in mind, when facing larger enemies, a smart tactic is to weaken them with your regular shot before taking them out with an elemental attack, since only the killing blow is relevant to the multiplier. At the end of each stage, a boss controlled usually by another anime girl confronts you and engages you in a 3-stage battle. Completing each stage quickly enough is what triggers the infamous shame breaks and will reward you with a freeze frame of your opponent being gradually stripped of their increasingly tattered clothing. Of course, taking hits yourself at any point will result in the same occurring to you, although be careful, if you're too eager to see your favourite girl undressed, you may be disappointed, as you have to have survived a certain amount of time for the shame break to trigger. And talking of the shame breaks, let's move on to presentation. So visually, Caladrius Blaze is less a mixed bag and more two separate bags that have never been within 100 metres of each other. The characters, who appear not just at Character Select but in storyboard cutscenes, an extensive gallery, and of course in the shame breaks, are at first glance fairly typical anime style, but in actual fact they're far from generic and have very unique designs, their features and expressions in particular imbuing each with real individual spirit. They've obviously been designed with great care, and their character creators' talent and eye for detail really shines through. Be warned though, while they never appear fully nude, some of the stills strip them dangerously close, and you may want to avoid playing this while you're in the same room as your girlfriend. Or, well, anyone who's unaware what a depraved creature you really are. So we've established that the character art is first rate. The backgrounds, on the other hand, are vastly different. Modelled in 3D, they can feel murky all too often. Part of that is due to the medieval-ish setting, but part is also due to the restrictions a lower budget will always impose on such a style, as well as the technical limitations of the era in which the game was first released. Some areas, like the abandoned village in the first stage, do look really rather good, but other areas, like the rotating blocks in stage 4, can look very rough around the edges. Overall, while the backgrounds are nothing to complain about, they do pale in comparison to the excellent character arc. Talking practically, bullets are always marked out very clearly, but can overlap and be obstructed by your own shots, causing confusion when the action gets really hectic. The shame break images too, which appear overlaid on the game screen, can block your view despite enemy bullets still remaining. Audio is also mixed. The music is good and the characters have a large amount of voiced lines, although Lilith's cries of moto moto might cause a few turned heads if you're playing around anyone who speaks Japanese. There are some technical issues with the audio in this Switch version, however, with volume poorly mixed and a lack of stereo. Hopefully these can get patched in the future. I haven't touched on story much so far, but there is one, and, well, that's all you really need to know, because it's a typically inconsequential piece of hard-to-follow fluff. The fact the main villain is called Graham pretty nicely sums things up in that respect. As well as the wealth of shot options and game modes already covered, another great part of the game is how much customization there is of a more prosaic nature. Multiple difficulties, stage select, skipping the cutscenes, and even on top of a regular 2-player mode, the ability to control 2 ships at once, all rounds out a package that really lets you do things your way. The only oddity in this regard is the in-game restart, which voids scores. I have no idea what the rationale behind this is, and this is the flip side of offering so much customization, exiting to the menu then restarting can take longer than you'd ideally like. Minor niggles though, and nothing that detracts too much from the game's overall excellence. When it comes to summing up, one thing I cannot emphasise enough is how incredible the variation on offer is, particularly in terms of shot types. Just the sheer volume of shots is impressive enough, but the variety between them and the inventiveness of types elevates them further, and the tactical opportunities they open up and wealth of playstyle options they provide is really quite staggering. Mastering how to use just one single ship can take a serious amount of practice, and getting a handle on all 8 is going to keep your hands full for a very long time indeed. Regardless of what you may think of the erotic nature of the visuals, there's no denying they're expertly crafted, and all in all, the game offers up a superb experience, and although I expected it to be decent, I have been blown away by quite how good it's turned out to be. I strongly recommend this to any and all shmup fans, and while it may have a few imperfections, I would score it a more than healthy 8.5 out of 10. So that is it, thanks for watching, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Cheers!